Hello and welcome to Designer Discussions with Miriam, Jason, and Maria. Today we're speaking with Miriam about the first step to take to get your next best project.
Welcome to Designer Discussions Podcast with
Miriam,
Maria.
and Jason. Tune in each week where we discuss marketing, PR, and business advice for design professionals.
so let's talk about why regional publicity is important for your design and remodeling business. Getting press doesn't have to be intimidating or out of reach. And I'm saying this up front because that's usually the sentiment that I sense coming up when I start talking to people about actually proactively reaching out and getting PR. But it doesn't have to be hard because, in fact, some of your best media opportunities might be right in your own backyard, which makes it a lot more accessible and I hope less intimidating than thinking you have to go reach out to an editor at AD, right? So, what are we going to talk about today? We're going to dive into a little bit about how to pitch to local magazines. That is the topic we have in our Designer Discussions Academy this month. So, it's very top of mind. I'm going to go a little bit into the difference between regional and national outlets and how working with those two different types of media it differs. We're going to talk more about the mindset and how you can. I'm basically going to try to convince you that you can totally do this because I know that anybody can, and I'm going to explain to you why that is. And then we're going to touch a little bit on once you've done regional media pitching, how that can help expand and grow your other PR opportunities as well. So, why should you pitch? Why should you try to get coverage, visibility in your regional media? As probably most of you who followed us for a while, and if you look back at previous episodes, we talk a lot about getting quick press wins, which we should probably update that episode because those platforms are always changing and just recently have. But that is the first thing I talk about. Then the second building block in how I teach design and remodeling companies to get visibility in the media is regional media. And the reason why that is because regional, and we're mostly talking regional magazines, because in the world of design and projects and the home overall, print is still the gold standard. And you've probably heard me say this before, but it's true. If it has a completely different perceived value to have a project covered in a magazine and printed on paper so you can flip through it. And if you have a showroom or a studio office, you can show it to people. And there's, even if it's a half a page or maybe a double page, sometimes the features are 4 to 6 pages long. So if you can land one of those, that's on a level on its own. It's much more valuable than most online mentions that you can get for your regional local client base. So regional magazines really are always looking for local talent, and they like to showcase local talent, local projects. They're always looking for stories in the community, and you are a part of the community. So you want to think about what content you can offer a magazine that would be interesting for them and their readers. If you get coverage in your city or state or region, it really gets your name out in front of the people that are actually going to hire you and buy your services. So I'm not proclaiming that getting regional media coverage is a lead generation tool, but a little bit it is, it has a touch of that. It really helps with your brand awareness, your reputation. It can act as a pull and bring people into your showroom or into your business. It can make your phone ring, all of those good things that we're looking for. So it really, one good local feature means that you're going to get more leads. It'll probably help your SEO. It is amazing social proof. And once you have this piece of coverage, you can use it for a long time. I know Jason said in a recent episode that all of your content should be very recent on your website. But trust me, if you got coverage in a regional magazine 2 years ago, people are still going to want to look at it. And you can still use that logo and the credibility from that media outlet. So I'm not saying you should rest on your laurels and get the one placement and be done with it, but they are pretty evergreen. It's like there are people who used to have a show on HGTV or maybe an appearance, and they're still using it 10 years later, and say as featured on. So I think that's probably that borders on being a little bit unethical or just not as impactful as I'd want it to be. But you can use it for a long time, is my point. So let's talk a little bit about why I am proposing regional media over national media to you. It's number one, it's the reach and the relevance. I mean, obviously, national publications like, let's think, AD, El Decor, House Beautiful, Veranda, all those, all the glossies, basically, they have a ton of prestige. They have a wide audience, and it's amazing to be picked up in one of them. It's very difficult though, and the likelihood that a feature like that is directly going to result in you getting more clients is questionable, right? Because people are reading it all throughout the country. The audience is not focused. And that is exactly the case when you work with your regional publications. The audience is narrower, but it's highly relevant to your business. And most likely, your ideal client is reading that magazine, especially if they are in the market to have something, either do a remodel or have a new kitchen put in, have their house redesigned. They're likely reading those magazines. There's also accessibility. And what I mean by that is that it's really, really difficult to get the attention of the editors that work for the big nationals. They get hundreds, probably thousands. They get an insane amount of emails every week from people who want to be featured in the magazine. It's it's difficult to get them to open your email. And it's even more difficult if you they don't know who you are, So if you send them an email, they have no idea who you are. They have 1,000 emails in their inbox. They're likely not going to open it. And even if they do, if you don't have credentials behind your name, like if you haven't been published in other places, it's very unlikely that they are going to be responsive to you pitching them. On the other hand, regional editors, they're much more approachable, because their job is to cover the community and the good stuff that's happening there. And so they're much more open to pitches directly from designers, remodelers, small businesses, small and medium-sized businesses in the community, because that is their focus is to cover exactly that content. So they are much more likely to read your email. Even if you have never talked to them, you just want to introduce yourself when you pitch them. Those are a couple of the things that we specifically teach in our academy in the month where we talk about regional pitching. But they're very likely, probably very happy actually, to get an email from you, which is always more fun, if you can get a positive reaction out of somebody. There is also the timeline. Actually, if it's for print, the timeline is always pretty long, which what I mean by that is like from the point where you pitch your project to the point where it actually gets published. It's definitely at least going to be 6 months, even with a lot of the regionals, especially for print, right? Online digital coverage can sometimes go faster, but that's definitely gonna it takes some time. But for the nationals, it can be insanely long, aside from the fact that you need professional photography, ideally not just done by a professional photographer, but you should have a stylist. They're really keen on featuring famous people, celebrities that live in these homes. And you really have to have some level of pedigree when it comes to media coverage. And even if you have all that, sometimes a project can take a year or a year and a half before it actually gets published. So it's sort of like the tippy top of the PR tiers, I would say. Whereas regional outlets, they just care about a great local story, great content. A lot of them do before and afters, any kind of project you're working on that has where there's some community impact or a nonprofit is involved. They also love homeowner stories that have a human interest element alongside with the project. But it doesn't have to be somebody famous, right? So it's just that the barrier of entry is a lot lower. So in summation, I would say that, national press really mostly boosts your brand image, where regional press actually drives your business, which is why I'm a big advocate of this for any of us businesses that operate mostly on a local level. From a mindset perspective, I want to say you just have to stop telling yourself that you're not ready for press or you don't know how to do it. I'm like, if you've completed a project and you're proud of it, you are ready to pitch it. It's not that hard. It's really not that hard. Trust me. And I can teach you exactly how to do it. And it doesn't have to be perfect. We have to drop the mindset of perfection, which is something I personally struggle with a lot, as Maria and Jason will attest to. But we really just have to drop it. You just have to get it done. I think one of the misconceptions that's widely spread is that a lot of people, when they think of regional media, they think of buying ads, right? It's like, oh, and then the ad reps are hounding you and they're trying to sell you this and that. But that is not what we are talking about here, right? There's two sides to every media outlet, and sometimes they intermingle some, but that there is what I call the publishing, the sales side of the business, where they try to sell you ads that you pay the space for, you create the ad, and you get published. That is absolutely not what we're talking about here. We're talking about earned coverage, where you have an interesting story, and the editor, who is on the editorial side of the magazine, not on the sales side. So you're working with the editor and you're not going to have to pay for everything. And chances that you're going to be hounded by the magazine afterwards to place more ads. I'm not saying it can't happen, but I don't think it's likely. A lot of them have pretty not strict, but they're ethical about it. And if they reach out to you and want to sell you ad, you can say no. There's absolutely zero pressure to that. If they say, "We'll run the story if you buy an ad," that's really not very ethical in the world of media, but that is something that's happening more and more. I wouldn't even say that's always necessarily a bad idea as long as the editorial content is actually executed by the editor who works at the magazine. And if you have money in your marketing budget to do that, I'd say it is actually a good option to keep in mind. But it just comes down to weighing those options. But generally speaking, we're going after content for you to get published without having to pay for it. Okay. Just wanted to make that clear. Let's talk a little bit about what's typically holding people back from pitching their projects. It's often it's fear of rejection, right? It said, "Oh my God, they're gonna ignore me." It's like, or I don't know how to do it. I don't know what to say. And I'm like, and what if they say no? And I'm like, and they might very well say no, but that's okay. That does not mean necessarily that your project was bad or that your pitch was bad. It might just mean that it's not right now the fit that they are looking for. Truth is, editors need good content. So you're not bothering them. You are helping them. So if you can flip your mindset from you trying to sell them something to you trying to help them, oftentimes that makes people a lot more comfortable with the approach. And you're not pitching yourself, right? You are pitching a story. You're pitching content to them. So even if they turn it down, it's not a personal rejection. Don't take it personally. It's all part of business. And we're all just trying to run our businesses and make a good living, right? So if you can reframe it, and when you reach out to them, you're just saying, if I can write an email to introduce myself to anybody, I can pitch to the media, because basically that's what it is. You're just writing an email to them with content that they care about. So how do you do that? I'm like, there's a few different steps involved, and we're not going to go into too much detail, but basically you have to find the right contact at the magazine. And with media operations are running very, very lean these days, so it shouldn't be too difficult. But if you read the magazine, in the front of the magazine, there's usually a page. It's called a masthead, where they list the staff of the magazine, and you should be able to find the editor right there. So then what you do basically is you craft an email where you introduce yourself and your business. You describe the project, tell them a little bit about what's interesting, unique about it. You have to give them some kind of photography, because they need to know visually what it looks like. And then you offer yourself as a resource. Those are the basic blocks of what we call a media pitch. But let's just call it an email you're going to send to the editor of your regional magazine. Some of what makes projects unique, and honestly, if you think about it, you probably have a very good sense of which ones of your projects would make a good story. It's the ones that Maybe they're timely. They have seasonal features like mudrooms in spring or an outdoor living area in summer, um, a college dorm room, when it comes time for back to school. Maybe the design is just spectacular in terms of color or materials, or there's really fun storage solutions that you built in, or maybe the project has a local angle, like it's a historic home, or there's a community connection with it. So there's so many different ways that you can pull out a story from the project that you're working with. But if you go through your project catalog in your mind, I am sure that there's probably one or two that are going to pop out that are a good fit. And those are the ones you should single out and pull together your materials and present them to your regional media, because chances are they might love them. That's really how easy it is. And once you land coverage in your regional magazine, it's number one, it's great because you'll have built a connection with the editor of the magazine, which oftentimes those people stick around for a long time. So that relationship really is an investment in your business, and editors are usually really super nice and sociable people, because they deal a lot with people and they love stories, so they love connecting with business owners. So just cultivate that, and once you've gotten one project published, if you have another good idea, you can run it by them, and it's going to feel much more natural the second and third time you do it. They may also reach out to you and ask you for like expert commentary on stories that they're working on. So it's just treat it like you treat other relationships, and just maintain them, cultivate them, keep the network and the information flowing. So once you've mastered that, then is when we would go on to thinking about pitching higher profile national media outlets, which that is a whole other podcast episode that honestly, most businesses that listen to us that are in the design and remodeling, design build space, probably not maybe something that you're ever going to want to do. But if PR is what floats your boat and that's what's important to you and you enjoy it, then absolutely go for it. And we could talk about that in more detail as well. But so let's recap. The recommendation is, start local, with pitching your projects. Always keep it simple. Don't overthink it. You are way more ready than you think. So I would encourage you. You've listened to this, and maybe if you thought, oh, maybe I could actually do this, I promise you can do it. So just pick up all your courage and start working on it. If you feel like you're not quite ready, you're interested, you might need some help, our Designer Discussions Academy is a program that it runs year round. Our waiting list is open right now. We will start again in October. And if this is something maybe you want to tackle sometime next year and you'd love for us to help you with it, you can sign up for the waiting list and we'll let you know when we're ready again. So with that said, thanks for listening, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks here at Designer Discussions.
Did you know it takes 17 to 20 touch points before your potential clients recognize who you are? Is your business the one that they find first when they are looking? If not, there's a solution. The Designer Discussions Academy membership with your Designer Discussions podcast hosts are your personal coaches. With weekly live sessions and exclusive community, practical resources, and expert guidance. We're here to simplify your marketing and boost your business. Sign up at designerdiscussions.com or follow the link in the show notes. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Designer Discussions and all of the helpful information. Subscribe to our podcast, leave us a review, and share it with your friends. We look forward to having you back next week. For more information on the podcast and the marketing studio, visit designerdiscussions.com and follow us on social media.